Please help me welcome to the Amplify stage, Keelin, Washington.
I'd like to ask you to take a journey with me into the past. I find that when I don't have to go through it alone, the fight to get back is a little easier. I was born and raised in California, where most of the time when we think of this place, we think of vacations, palm trees, great tacos, and amazing weather. And trust me, all of this is true. What we don't think about is that this place is in the top 10 states with the highest rate of human trafficking. And trust me, I, like most people, didn't believe that it happened in the States at all. I believed this was a third world issue and something we only see in movies. Until it happened to me. My experience with human trafficking started when I was just 14. I was at the mall with a group of friends and met a guy. We hit it off from the start. Every day we'd spend hours on the phone and as much time together as possible. And I felt connected to him in a way that I had never felt before. I had a rough childhood growing up, and I was excited to have a man focus on my every need. He would tell me just how beautiful he thought I was and made me feel like I was the only girl in the world. This continued for a few months until one day he approached me. He said he was struggling financially. This is when he made the suggestion to sleep with men in exchange for money. He promised it was only for a short time and assured me I was safe. I thought he was crazy. I knew I didn't want to do it, but I didn't want to lose the bond I had or disappoint the one person I felt who had loved me more than I had ever felt before. So, reluctantly, I agreed. Only after a short time, I would have a devastating interaction with one of the buyers. Feeling hurt, angry, and now afraid, I went back to the person who I thought loved me and let him know I could no longer do this and we would find another way to get the money. As soon as those words fell out of my mouth, everything changed. I felt the force of his punches and the harsh words telling me that I couldn't leave. And that if I tried, not only would he kill me, but he would kill my mother too. He told me nobody would ever want a prostitute, and my life belonged to him now. That was the last thing I remember before I went unconscious. I woke up hours later and managed to pick myself off the floor. I walked to the mirror and no longer recognized the girl looking back at me. Not only because of the abuse, but because the girl who loved sports and hanging out with her friends, or the girl who loved life and thought she knew her value, she was no longer looking back at me. This continued for 3.5 years. He had sold me all across the country: California, Nevada, Michigan, Florida, Arizona, over a dozen states in total. I was continuously abused, tortured, and repeatedly raped more times than I can count. But the worst part for me was that these experiences stripped me of my self-worth, dignity, and identity, and replaced it with being trapped in the prison of my own self-doubt, a negative view of myself, and the seed of not being enough. Yes, it would be more than 3 years before I escaped my trafficker, and this may sound like a big victory. But imagine this. I had no education, a distorted view of myself, and humanity was something I feared. I had reached a point where I believed everything that was told to me by my trafficker and the buyers. I was worthless. Nobody could ever love someone who had slept with so many men. I had no value and I had nothing to offer. How could a woman with my past find herself again and break free from the prison of self-doubt that was created inside me? I wish I could say that I figured it out right away, but the truth is, Self-doubt is something that would take me years to overcome. It had become this prison in my mind that any time I would want to break out, the prison doors of self-doubt would slam back shut. But I knew that if I was able to escape my trafficker, this prison in my head was not going to be the thing that held me back. But I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I experienced this when I was invited to sit with a group of women who were starting a nonprofit to help survivors of human trafficking. And I was excited at the opportunity. But those feelings were quickly replaced with self-doubt when I realized I was amongst a group of educated white women who came from a wealthy upbringing. I did not belong at this table. I had nothing to offer. I was less than because I was trafficked, and there were clear cultural differences. I was Black. They were white. They were rich. I was not. Like I said, I did not belong at this table. I didn't believe I could contribute, so I didn't. Instead, I sat in the back of the room silent, letting self-doubt win once again. After that evening, I never returned, even though they had invited me back again. If I knew then how to change the narrative of those negative thoughts, maybe the outcome would have turned out differently. I would have realized that me just sitting at the table created diversity, and my trauma was the exact expertise they needed to start their nonprofit. There's an African proverb that says, when there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do no harm. I needed to learn how to fight that enemy I had living inside of me. The enemy being self-doubt and the negative thoughts that drove me. Do you see that self-doubt inside of you? Those negative thoughts that creep into your mind and begin to tear down the dreams and the opportunities you thought were possible. Is self-doubt impacting your relationships, your career, your education? How about parenting or finances? Does self-doubt have you feeling like you just don't deserve a seat at the table? I'm sure you've experienced that debilitating self-doubt. It's not a pleasant place to be. You question everything, and everything seems like an uphill battle. But imagine, if you believed in yourself enough to break free from your own prison and believe that the very thing you feel you are not enough for is the very thing that is waiting for you to arrive. I learned how to overcome my self-doubt by simply changing the narrative. You know, that conversation we all have with ourselves. To do this, I use two simple words. What if? As soon as I began to see self-doubt creeping in, instead of letting it continue and derail me, I'd stop that conversation and insert the question, what if? This allowed me to imagine the possibilities, and seeing that something was possible was the very thing that opened my prison door. My prison door was my fear of education. In my mid-20s, I had only a 7th grade education with no social skills to go along with it. I struggled with being dyslexic, and anything with numbers was a fear all in its own. These circumstances created a tremendous amount of self-doubt. I learned how to change the narrative and ask what if. And in doing so, in 2016, I received my GED. Yes, starting out was the hardest part. I mean, that's when my self-doubt was the loudest. At some point, my curiosity for what was possible became louder than the doubt I had. My prison I was locked in mentally started to crumble with each step towards self-confidence. In 2019, I became certified to work in the mental health field. And now, in 2021, I'm dual majoring in social work and psychology, and I'm looking into starting my own nonprofit. I learned to overcome my self-doubt by pouring self-confidence in myself and dreaming about the possibilities of the things that scared me to even try. We always hear it said that we are our own worst enemy. But what if we became our biggest cheerleader? And what I found in myself to help me break those barriers, to get to a place where I can share this with you today, is also something you have in yourself. And of course, I believe it, but what if you did too? Thank you.